In the previous episode, Katherine returned to town, and Caroline became a vampire. With Tyler's uncle Mason back in town, Tyler learned the secrets of his family. To prove something to Sheriff Forbes, Mason used an innocent young girl to spike the vampire's drinks with vervain. After Damon drank the vervain-laced alcohol, he nearly lost control. Sheriff Forbes observed the actions of the Salvatore brothers, and now she believed Mason's words they were both vampires. She immediately called for backup. The Salvatore brothers quickly realized that Mason was behind this, so they began searching for him, but they fell right into his trap. Mason used himself as bait, luring the Salvatore vampire brothers into the woods where Sheriff Forbes and her team were lying in ambush. The Salvatore brothers were shot multiple times and then injected with vervain. However, both Sheriff Forbes and Mason underestimated one thing: there was another vampire at the party. Sheriff Forbes' own daughter, Caroline. Caroline, using her enhanced vampire hearing, learned of everything. Sheriff Forbes and her team took the Salvatore brothers to the cellar, intending to secretly execute them. Caroline and Elena were on their way to the cellar when Mason intercepted them. From a few meters away, Mason caught a whiff of the decaying scent on Caroline. A werewolf's sense of smell can distinguish vampires. Mason threatened Elena's life, but he underestimated Caroline's fighting abilities. A werewolf is no match for a vampire except on a full moon. Caroline delivered a powerful kick to Mason's weak spot, completely incapacitating him. In the cellar, Damon was the first to wake up. He appealed to their friendship, but Sheriff Forbes answered him with a bullet.
You're my friend.
Our friendship was a lie.
By now, Caroline and Elena had reached the cellar door, but Caroline hesitated. She didn't want her mother to know her true identity. However, Elena, disregarding her own safety, rushed into the cellar, forcing Caroline to follow. Caroline's figure flickered from one spot to another, and she swiftly eliminated Sheriff Forbes' 2 deputies with lightning speed. This was her way of telling her mother that she had become the very thing her mother despised the most: a vampire. Sheriff Forbes sat quietly by, watching the vampire brothers drink the blood of her fallen men. Then she looked at her daughter, blood still smeared across her face, and her beliefs crumbled. Sheriff Forbes could not accept the truth that her daughter was a vampire. As Damon regained his strength, he grabbed Sheriff Forbes. Everyone thought he was about to kill her, but Damon spoke sincerely.
You're my friend. We gotta clean this up.
Because Sheriff Forbes had vervain in her system, she couldn't be compelled by a vampire, so they temporarily locked her up. Once the vervain had been metabolized out of her system, she could be compelled to forget the entire incident, and Sheriff Forbes was willing to comply. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to face her daughter in the future. Caroline then confessed to Elena about being threatened by Katherine. Overcome with guilt, she broke down in tears. To Caroline's surprise, Elena had already guessed the truth. Not only did Elena forgive her, but she also thanked her for stepping in. The attack made Stefan feel powerless. He was too weak without drinking human blood, so he decided to start drinking it and learn to control himself. Elena was worried that Stefan might lose himself again, so she decided to let Stefan drink her blood, just a little bit each day. She used her own life to give Stefan a safety net. When Mason returned home, he learned that his nephew Tyler had nearly killed a girl that day, which left Mason genuinely shocked. Tyler, on the other hand, was deeply conflicted because in that moment when the girl fell, he actually felt a flicker of anticipation. Not wanting to become a monster, Tyler handed over the Moonstone. As soon as Mason got the Moonstone, he arranged a meeting with Katherine. It turned out they were working together all along. Years ago, before Mason had activated the werewolf curse, Katherine had secretly compelled Mason's friend to provoke him into a deadly confrontation. Enraged, Mason accidentally killed his friend, which activated the curse. At that moment, Katherine stepped in and won Mason's heart. Mason's search for the Moonstone was driven by his desire for a closer relationship with Katherine. But how did Caroline become a vampire? Caroline was severely injured and on the brink of death, but Damon saved her with vampire blood. However, before the blood could leave her system, Katherine killed her. After reviving, Caroline was just one step away from becoming a real vampire. She only needed to drink human blood. Caroline wasn't aware of the changes in her body, but she was starving. Since it was still dark outside, the nurse on duty paid her no attention. Driven by instinct, Caroline stole a blood bag. After drinking the blood, she completed her transformation into a vampire, and her obsession with blood became uncontrollable. The next morning, as a ray of sunlight streamed through a crack in the curtains, Caroline was horrified to find that the sunlight burned her skin. At that moment, her boyfriend Matt came to visit her. They were about to kiss, but the sunlight got in the way. Matt, unaware of Caroline's transformation, opened the curtains just as Caroline darted into the corner to hide. After Matt left, all the memories that had been erased came flooding back to Caroline. She realized that she had been toyed with by a vampire. The overwhelming amount of information left her terrified. However, Caroline had also learned about the abilities of vampires, the heightened senses, superhuman speed, and the power of compulsion. Caroline, without any guidance, quickly taught herself how to use these powers. She experimented on the nurse. She could be considered the smartest rookie vampire. Tonight, the town is hosting a carnival, and Caroline, as the queen of socializing, can't afford to miss it. Before leaving the hospital, she compelled the nurse. The first person Caroline sought out after her transformation was Damon.
I remember how you manipulated me. You pushed me around, abused me, erased my memories, fed on me.
Damon, initially dismissive, remarked that it was impossible, unless, seeing the smirk on Caroline's face, Damon's expression grew serious. Caroline delivered Katherine's message.
She said, "Game on."
Wait.
Damon was deeply troubled, not because he couldn't defeat Caroline, but because turning Caroline into a vampire was all part of Katherine's game. Afterward, Damon informed Stefan and Elena of the situation, leading to a disagreement over what to do about Caroline. Damon was adamant that Caroline needed to be eliminated because she knew the true identities of both brothers. Elena strongly disagreed. Stefan's silence spoke volumes, his unspoken stance. After all, Vicky was also turned into a vampire by Damon, and in the end, it was Stefan who killed her. At the party, Caroline was playing a ring toss game and found herself unable to control her strength. When she hugged Matt, she could clearly hear the sound of his heart squeezing blood, and her instincts wanted to tear him apart. Caroline's sudden retreat left Matt thinking she had started to hate him. The out-of-control Caroline wandered into the parking lot and unexpectedly ran into Carter.
I'm so sorry.
Carter has just been beaten up by a werewolf, and then Caroline sucks all the blood out of him. It's his unlucky night. Damon was the first to find Caroline. He comforted the frightened newbie with a hug, but the stake in his hand was aimed right at her heart. Fortunately, Stefan arrived in time to stop his brother, but Damon was unwilling to let it go. Damon only softened when faced with Elena. By then, Bonnie had also arrived. She couldn't accept that Caroline had not only turned into a vampire but had also killed someone. Stefan took Caroline away, gently wiping the blood from her face and then teaching her how to control her emotions. While Elena and Bonnie were still fretting over Carter's body, Damon had already brought a shovel. After more than 100 years, he had become very skilled at handling these situations. But to Bonnie, this was just further proof of Damon's inhumanity. She blamed everything on Damon. Caroline's transformation was because of his blood, and so was this death. It was his responsibility. Bonnie began chanting a spell, and Damon fell to his knees, his head splitting with pain. She was prepared to set Damon on fire, but Elena intervened just in time, causing the flames on Damon to disappear. When Damon returned to the mansion, he found Jeremy already there, waiting for him, twirling a stake in his hand. Damon didn't take the young man seriously and started pouring himself a drink. Just as he brought the glass to his lips, Jeremy informed him that he had laced it with vervain. Jeremy had come to kill Damon but changed his mind. He didn't want to betray his own will for the sake of family duty. Damon merely teased him about not even sharpening the stake properly. In the end, they let bygones be bygones with a smile. Late at night, Matt, concerned about Caroline, sneaked into her room, though Caroline had sensed him long before. They kissed. By this point, Caroline had learned to restrain her instincts and control her desires, truly a vampire with extraordinary potential. Meanwhile, Stefan woke Elena from her sleep. Eager to make up for a missed romantic date, the fairground lights flickered back to life, and with a leap, Stefan carried Elena onto the Ferris wheel, where they gazed down at the brightly lit town below and shared a passionate kiss. The fierce wolf in front of Tyler turned out to be his uncle, Mason. At that moment, Tyler finally understood what his uncle meant by the family curse. Their bloodline carried the werewolf gene. A few days earlier, Tyler's uncle Mason had suddenly returned to town, and after witnessing his uncle display superhuman strength multiple times, Tyler began to suspect something was off. Tyler had secretly followed his uncle to the old family estate, where he discovered the ground was covered in jagged claw marks. What kind of creature's claws can split mountains and shatter stone? Mason quickly realized that this town was the territory of the Salvatore vampire brothers. Werewolves and vampires have been mortal enemies since ancient times, though they had clashed in secret. Neither side dared to make a bold move. The Salvatore brothers split up. Damon took on the task of investigating the werewolf secrets, while Stefan focused on helping the newly turned vampire Caroline craft a daylight ring that would allow her to walk in the sun without fear. Elena's mother, Isabel, had been an expert in the field of supernatural creatures, so Damon, Alaric, and Elena went to the university where Isabel had once taught to investigate the werewolf mystery. Vanessa, one of Isabel's students, greeted them warmly at first but then suddenly attacked Elena with a crossbow. Quick as a flash, Damon used teleportation to block the arrow with his back. Alaric quickly subdued Vanessa. It turned out that Vanessa had read Isabel's research and had mistaken Elena for Katherine. Once they explained their intentions, Vanessa, upon realizing that Damon was a vampire, instantly became smitten. Vanessa retrieved all of Isabel's research materials to help them investigate the werewolves. Meanwhile, under the spell of the witch Bonnie, Caroline also received a daylight ring, allowing her to walk freely in the sunlight. Stefan proved to be a very competent teacher, patiently instructing Caroline on how to hunt small animals to become a vegetarian vampire. During the lesson, Caroline couldn't stop complaining, questioning why they had to eat such cute little rabbits. Stefan couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that when a person becomes a vampire, all of their pre-existing traits are amplified, so Caroline became even more talkative. After hunting the rabbits, they headed to a pool party Tyler was hosting at the quarry. The site was not far from the cellar, which gave Mason a headache. He tried to persuade Tyler to move the party elsewhere because it was a full moon tonight, and he feared he might lose control. Stefan was also at the party, and he exchanged nods with Mason. Caroline, now a vampire, was even more adorable, but her jealousy had also intensified. When a girl named Amy flirted with Matt, Caroline, out of spite, used her compulsion ability to command Amy to flirt with every single man at the party. The other four also found out about the legend of the werewolves. According to legend, when vampires and werewolves were rampant hundreds of years ago, a shaman put a curse on them, making the vampires slaves to the sun and the werewolves slaves to the moon. This is why vampires fear sunlight, while werewolves can only transform on the night of a full moon.
When the full moon crests in the sky, who's ever unlucky enough to fall under the werewolf curse turns into a wolf.
Can they control the transformation?
If it were a choice, it wouldn't be called a curse.
As the full moon approached, Mason went to the cellar and chained himself up, a ritual he had endured countless times before. Damon and his group discovered that the reason werewolves were so rare was that vampires had once hunted them down. Knowing that a werewolf's bite could kill a vampire, under normal circumstances, vampires are stronger and more skilled, but on the night of a full moon, the transformed werewolves are superior to vampires. Damon's expression grew serious. He could not allow any potential threats. Stefan felt a chill down his spine after receiving Elena's message a werewolf might be nearby, and Caroline was nowhere to be found. In the cellar, Mason frantically shackled himself. Time was running out. He could feel his blood boiling. Besides the chains, he had prepared wolfsbane to weaken his strength. But at this moment, Tyler brings a girl here to make out. Mason took a deep breath. This was exactly what he had feared. The girl Tyler had brought was none other than Amy, the one Caroline had previously compelled. Luckily, Mason slipped away in time. He had a backup plan to face his transformation during the full moon inside his car. A werewolf's transformation is extremely painful, with every bone in the body breaking and reforming. Meanwhile, Elena found information about the doppelganger in the data. Upon learning that a doppelganger is essentially a double of the original person, she began to suspect that she might be Katherine's doppelganger. Otherwise, how could they look identical despite being centuries apart in age? While Tyler was getting intimate with Amy, she suddenly snapped out of her trance and left abruptly. It seems that there is a time limit to hypnosis. In the forest, as Stefan searched for Caroline, he heard the low growl of a werewolf. Following the sound, he came upon Mason's car. The chains had been broken, and through the car window, Stefan saw a pair of golden eyes. A massive wolf burst through the window and vanished into the forest like a flash of lightning. Stefan's scalp tingled with fear. At the same time, Caroline is getting intimate with Matt. Seeing the blood triggers an uncontrollable desire in her, and she starts to bite Matt wildly. Fortunately, Stefan arrived just in time. In an effort to protect Matt, they lured the wolf away, only to unexpectedly run into Tyler. At that moment, Mason, who had transformed into a wolf, tackled Caroline. One bite from him would mean certain death for her. Tyler shouted angrily, "Get away!" Surprisingly, Mason actually backed off. Afterwards, Caroline hypnotized Matt to make him forget what happened tonight. Tyler, meanwhile, discovered his uncle, naked and disheveled.
It was you.
Caroline felt incredibly guilty about hurting Matt tonight, so when Amy started flirting with him, she purposely gave them a hard time, acting out in anger just to bring them together. Sometimes, love means letting go.
We were just talking.
Oh, is that what you call it?
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not, Matt. She's into you and anyone can see it.
Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm just gonna go.
Knock it off.
So what, are you like breaking up with me?
Yeah.
Love is a mystery. It begins without warning, has no set course, and no clear end. When Damon took Elena home, he tried to apologize in his typical, roguish way, but Elena insisted on an honest answer to one question. When Damon snapped Jeremy's neck, did he know Jeremy was wearing the resurrection ring? This was a question with an easy answer, but after much inner turmoil, Damon decided to be honest and confess the truth, and that turned it into a deadly question.
I'm sorry.
Is yes. You have lost me forever.
Damon was once again deeply hurt by Elena. He had spent the entire day helping her investigate Katherine, only to realize Elena had been using him all along. Damon left with the parting words, "You're not just like Katherine in looks." The unspoken half of that sentence was, "Your scheming is just like hers, too." Caroline woke up to find Elena standing by her bed.
Elena?
Nope. Try again.
Catherine.
Don't be frightened. We're gonna have so much fun together.
Queen Katherine was about to stir up trouble again.